Hey everybody, it is damn good to see you. We were going to go with Four Roses, small batch. We got some celebrating to do tonight. Tons of good stuff happening. So Basil Hayden it is. I got to tell you, I am really happy that you are here. This is going to be a little bit different of a bourbon talk. We're going to get into the questions, and we have a hell of a lot of stuff to talk about. But I gotta tell you that this is there's some discussion that we're gonna have tonight that's different, and I think long term, you're probably going if you watch this regularly, if you watch these broadcasts regularly, I think you're going to probably remember this for a while in terms of the bourbon talk. Talks. So first things first, I say it all the time. There are not many victories in politics. It is a really, really hard endeavor. And if you care, and if you have concern for the people, and if you're ethical, and you're empathetic, there aren't that many wins. So what I want to do first is I want to say cheers. And I want to say cheers to the people for showing up in this election. The people won this election. It was not the Democratic Party. There are so many things to celebrate. There are so many new good people going into Congress. For me, John Fetterman stands at the top of that list. I just want to say cheers before we get to the meat of this thing. It's good. You celebrate the wins when you get them. So I got a bunch of questions here, and there are a bunch of questions about what happens with the Democratic Party next. And we will get to that, and we will discuss the Democratic Party from a distance. And we will talk about what to expect and what's going to happen. But I want to say a couple of things. And I want to say a couple of things because when we do these live streams, when we talk, when we have an opportunity to sit and compare notes and understand things, I want to say for a very, very long time, since 2016, when I was sneaking into Trump rallies and reporting from what I heard there and the danger that I uncovered there. Since 2016, I have been trying so hard to understand what's going on. And I want to say this. I was trying to understand it intellectually, and I was trying to understand it because for me, when it comes to things like my anxiety, when I know that there's danger, when something's happening, when something feels out of my control, I want to control it. That's always been my initial reaction. And in this, I wanted to understand it the exact same way that like I do not like flying that well. I want to enjoy turbulence, right? I want to enjoy it by understanding it, or at least get over my fear of turbulence. I've spent the last 6 years trying to catch up to deep politics. I've been spending the last 6 years to understand history and to understand socioeconomics. And I have to tell you, I feel like with the new book, The Midnight Kingdom, that I finally got my answers. And I want to say that I don't want to just diagnose anymore. And I'm going to shine a spotlight on this because I study radicalization, I study conspiracy theories, I study authoritarianism. Obviously, I'm going to do that. But I have to tell you, and I have to assume that you feel this, it's not just what happened in the midterms. It feels like something has fundamentally shifted. And one of the things that you have to do in order to change the world, in order to make change possible, in order to push things forward and find a better way, which, my God, I think that's what we want. I think we're tired of this world exploiting us. I think we're tired of being under the heel of an oppressive system that privileges the wealthy and the powerful to the absolute detriment of all of us. I think we want to make the world better. And I think that we have entered into a space where that is possible. There are these moments, there are these windows that are opening. And we're going to talk about the Republican Party in a second. where the Republican Party is going and what the possibilities are for not just MAGA, but what happens with the GOP next. Like some of that, like those questions, the uncertainty that's there are moments where that gravity that keeps things in check, that gravity that keeps the reality and the consensus and the status quo, and it keeps it together. There are other moments where you can feel it and you know that it is lessening and you know that the window is opening for change. The window is opening for change right now. We're going to talk about how to make that happen, but I want to have a larger, quick talk about that before we get into it. It starts by accepting that the world can change. It starts by accepting that fear and terror are not going to rule your lives. For the past 6 years, like if you are paying attention to this before, like me, you've seen these things. You've been troubled by these things. The last 6 years have been nonstop trauma. And that is not on accident. Authoritarianism not only feeds on powerlessness, it uses powerlessness and oppression and demoralization to build itself up, to build itself into movement. And that is what has been happening. You have been going through incredible trauma. And before what happened over the past 6 years, you were going through trauma through an exploitative capitalist system. Those things have put you in a place where you do not feel like you have power, you do not feel like you have agency, you do not feel like there is an ability to change things. And my God, the status quo is so large. Woodrow Wilson used to call it the Great Maze. That normal people were supposed to look at it and they were supposed to say, that thing's too big, I can't do anything about it. And you are supposed to trust technocrats. You are supposed to look for people who are experts, who will do it for you. And most of them, by the way, are unelected. Most of them have no democratic accountability whatsoever. And that is why it feels like so much of this is beyond our control. And what happens when things are beyond your control? What happens when politics are beyond your control? What happens when liberal democracy doesn't feel like a vote is going to change anything? Conspiracy theories come in. And conspiracy theories come in. Somebody asked for my bourbon. That's my bourbon right here. It's good too. It's good bourbon. Conspiracy theories flow in and they tell you that there's an enemy, and they tell you that if you give us power, if you give up on democracy, if you give up on common human basic decency, we'll fix the problem. We'll squash the shit out of whoever is the problem, right? Be it Jews, be it people of color, be it gay people, trans people, women, poor people. That is how they get you. Things are changing right now. And here's what I want to say tonight on this bourbon talk, and we'll get into the specifics in a minute. I'm going to put a pin in it here and I'm going to say it. I have made a decision in my life that I'm going to spend the next 2 years working like hell to get my hands dirty, and I'm going to be in the fight. And I want you to too. I'm going to go out and organize. I'm going to go out and try and engage in solidarity. I'm going to go out and try and build coalitions. And I'll tell you this, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find the best possible candidates out there that we can possibly find. And I'm not talking about somebody who can raise a bunch of money. I'm not talking about finding these regular candidates. I'm not talking about finding lawyers, former CIA agents, all these people. I'm not doing that. And you shouldn't either. We need to find regular people. We need to find people like us. We need to find people like us who have been mistreated and exploited. We need to find community leaders. We need to find people who have been in the trenches taking care of the people who have been exploited and the people who have been taken advantage of. So here's what I say. If we're going to take advantage of this moment, and we have 2 years right now before the next election cycle winds up. I will talk more about this in a second. I want to put some real candidates out there to try and change some things. I want to put pressure on the Democrats. I want on the ballot real people who are at least going into the primary. And I'm not just talking about the Senate. I'm not just talking about Congress. I'm talking about everything from the Congress down to dog catcher, because I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of people who are taking their personal trauma and their insecurities and their terror out on the rest of us, because they are the people who are going to run us into the abyss. And I'm done. And I want you to be done too. And I want us to work. And there's so much work to be done. But my God, even if we lose, even if 2024 comes and like we have not made the change that we want to make, I'm telling you this, by engaging in solidarity, by organizing, by getting involved locally, regionally, you name it. If you do that, even if you lose, and by God, we have to celebrate our victories in politics because they are few and far between. So cheers. Even if you lose, you are going to win. Period. You need to go out if you can and work with people and volunteer and find the local people who are making a difference. They are going to welcome you with open arms. And these are good people. And these are kind people. And these are people that we can build coalitions with. We're going to work on it. Starting now, this is no longer just a diagnosis. I'm done. I'm done. I reached a point where I couldn't just sit by anymore, and I couldn't just point it out. And I'm going to keep educating. I'm going to keep trying to teach people what is going on. I'm going to use social media. I'm going to use books. I'm going to use podcasts. I'm going to use all of those things to continue to try and educate. But it's time that we got in the fight. This isn't a TV show. This isn't an entertainment. We are watching this country. Isn't a TV show. This isn't an entertainment. We are watching this country fall apart, and we are watching this world fall apart because those people are the ones showing up, and we have to stop. So that's what I say tonight. And I got a bunch of questions, and we are going to get into so much of it. But I want to say one last thing. Not only is a better world possible, not only is there the possibility of us going out and making a better, fairer, more human world? Those things can happen. And I'm telling you right now that the far right is working their ass off to go ahead and push us further and further into the abyss, into this nightmarish future. The far right is working around the clock, and we're watching evidence of the thing that we've been talking about now for years. I told everybody what was going to happen with Trump. I told everybody what was going to happen with DeSantis. I told everybody what was going to happen with national conservatism. And by the way, someone just said, how do we get rid of Citizens United? I have an answer for that in a second. And that's part of this. That's a big, big ass part of it. I told you what was going to happen. And these are the ones who are out organizing. They're out working. They are the ones out there getting their hands dirty. And I'm done. I'm done ceding ground to these people. I'm done spending all of my time like watching this happen and just diagnosing it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get my hands dirty. I'm going to bleed for this thing. And I want you to too. And you deserve better. You deserve better. The people you love deserve better. The people that you don't even know that you love deserve better. We all deserve better. And just because the authoritarian right wing won't deal with their shit, they won't deal with their trauma, they won't deal with their terror, they won't deal with any of this, just because they will not take care of themselves, and just because they won't heal, and they have an entire political project, an entire billion-dollar right-wing ecosystem that tells them that they don't have to change, and that the problem isn't them, it's the world, and all you have to do is punish it and crush it. Just because they won't take it on and just because they won't deal with it. We have to do it. We cannot cede ground to them. And I want to tell you something. I think that those people can change too, at least some of them. I think some of them are redeemable. I think some of them can come along, and we will talk about why. But that's it. We can talk about what's going on, and I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it because we need to understand it. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to move forward here in a second, but I don't know what happened in New York. I didn't see anything about New York. That's interesting. I'll keep an eye out. I don't know what happened in New York. But things are changing. I'm done. I'm done with this shit. I'm 41 years old. This thing has aged me. And the last thing that I'm gonna do is give over the world to this shit, because I deserve better and you guys deserve better. Yeah, New York is red now. Of course it is. Yep. And that's not shocking, to be honest with you. And we'll talk more about New York in a second. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put it in with a question, a little bit later, and we'll get into that whole conversation. But that's it. That's the whole thing. That's where we're at, and that's where I'm going with it. And I hope you'll join me. And I hope we'll take this thing seriously and we'll fight back, because it's time to stop feeling alone and powerless. It's time to go after this thing and just say, "No. Nope. Nope. Done." All right, let's go ahead and start. Let's get into this thing, and we'll get into more of the ways that we are going to make this change and that we are going to we're going to make this better. All right. Leslie starts us off. So grateful for all your work in the new lecture series. Thank you. The second lecture of the Midnight Kingdom lecture series, it's prepared. I just need to tape it. I just need to do it. I'm going to mess around. I have other ideas about how I'm going to do that thing, because I need to get information out there so we can start bringing more and more people into this thing. That's why it's important. My questions, and by the way, two questions. The first one I'm going to go ahead, and the second one I'm going to fold in something else. Number one, it's Saturday night, and I'm seeing people exclaim over Dems keeping the Senate. Will you please put this in proper context via cinema and mansion? Absolutely, I will. We get told constantly that control of the Senate means everything, and that means the agenda can go forward. We know better. We know exactly what Joe Manchin's going to do. We know exactly what Kristen Sinema is going to do. And I have to tell you right now, we need to understand that the next 2 years are not 2 years. And the House is one thing, the Senate is the other. We know already that the next 2 years are not going to be 2 years in which things are going to be pushed forward. There might be a couple bills that pass and they die or they languish in one or the other. Meanwhile, we already know what Joe Manchin's going to do. We already know what Kirsten Sinema is going to do. Let's stop being surprised by it. And so what do? We need to make plans outside of them. So here's the exact case. Like, Manchin and Sinema are going to hold up anything that corporations don't want them to. That's it. They're there for special interest. And I got more bad news. Even if the Democrats picked up 5 seats in the Senate, there are Democrats right now who hide behind Joe Manchin and hide behind Kirsten Sinema, and they would also be a veto for corporations and special interest as well. That's the hard truth. Y'all, like, some people don't want to talk about that. Some people don't want to have a discussion about it. Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema benefit politically by doing these things. There are plenty of other Democrats who would do the exact same thing. They would take the hit because they are there for special interest in corporations. So here is the entire point. And question number 2, I'm going to go ahead and bring it in here. Jill says, what is at the core of the rot in the Democratic Party? If I remember correctly, you mentioned something about Pelosi controlling the purse strings. Can it be pinpointed to a single person, or is it widespread and will take decades to clean up? Let's diagnose the problem so we can understand how to fix this. The problem is that both parties in the United States of America are completely and utterly latched to the capitalist project. That's it. They represent 2 different sections of capitalist project. The Republicans represent just the absolute anti-human, make them go to work, make them die in a pandemic. Period. That's what the Republicans do. And the Republicans are the ones who now, and this is why 2024 is so important, and that's why the next couple of years are so important. The Republicans are going to be the ones who say, hey, guess what? If you don't go to work, you're going to die. Guess what? We're going to take away all these regulations. Guess what? We're going to make your kids go to work and get crushed in gears. All right? That's what the Republican Party is there for. It's the no conscious whatsoever expression of what the capitalist market wants. And they're going to put the hurt on a bunch of people, and they're going to keep it going and going and going until this entire project burns out everybody except for one person who owns everything. That's what capitalism does, and that's what capitalism does if you do not control it. Period. The Democratic Party represents a completely different capitalist constituency. And this has not always been the case. And we'll get into why. And we'll talk about what happened here. The Democratic Party at this point They have, and by the way, the Republican Party represents corporations, the wealthy, and small business owners. People who are like regional bosses, right? The person with the best linoleum manufacturer in, I don't know, Wyoming. Those are the people that the Republican Party represents. The Democratic Party represents corporations. It represents also, you got professional managerial classes. Those are the people, by the way, who went to college, who are now stewards of the capitalist system. And here is what happens. And here's why everything has gotten all so cocked up. All right. These people who are in this professional managerial class. And by the way, like some of us are in it. I have an advanced degree, right? I was out teaching people how to function out in the world. I was the type of person who would be like, hey, here's how you function in a professional environment. Here's how to be a professional and intellectual. Here's how to do all of that stuff. All right. Professional managerial class. They want to believe that they're more empathetic. They want to believe that they are, my God, they would never vote for Trump. Holy God, how could that possibly ever, how could you ever do it, right? These are the people who are racked by guilt about their place in the world, all right? These are the people who, like, they have wealth, they have comfort, right? They can avoid a lot of the problems of the worsening system. They can afford to. Neoliberalism creates multiple lanes that you can be in. The worst lane sucks, right? And climate change is coming for you, crime is coming for you, all of that. Over here, you pay a little bit extra and you're in business class. All of a sudden, you got a little bit more leg room. You know what I mean? That divide has created unbelievable amounts of problems. There are tons of people who vote for the Democratic Party. I call it caucusing. I caucus with the Democratic Party. I am not a Democrat. I am a leftist. All right. I am a leftist. I am not a member of the Democratic Party. I would rather vote for them than I would vote for the Republican Party because the Republican Party will destroy us. All right. The Democratic Party will do all these gestures, right? They'll take the knee during Black Lives Matter. They'll make a big show out of, caring about like some of this stuff. And meanwhile, they're still there to help the markets. They're still there to make sure that the business of capitalism, particularly neoliberal capitalism, continues on. This changed in the 1980s. And if you haven't heard this before, I'll tell you very quickly. It happened in the 1980s when the Democratic Party, particularly under the guidance of the DLC, Al Fromm, Bill Clinton, people like that, the New Democrats, they looked at Ronald Reagan. They said, we will never defeat Reaganism. Can't do it. As Reagan's bringing in austerity and redistributing tens of trillions of dollars, our tens of trillions of dollars, yours, mine, the people that I love, my family, your families. They took our money, tens of trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars that were redistributed from the poorest of the poor and the middle class all the way up to the wealthiest people. The Democratic Party, under the leadership of Al Fromm, Bill Clinton, and the DLC, said, we can't beat that. Reagan has it all over. We have to be more like them. We have to put a human face on Reaganism. And that's what they did. And what did they do? They betrayed the traditional base of the Democratic Party. And here was the traditional base of the Democratic Party. People of color, labor unions, working people, the poor. And why? Because the Democratic Party, back during the New Deal era, okay, we're currently in the neoliberal consensus. We'll talk more about neoliberalism as we go. The New Deal consensus, the Democratic Party represented the interest of people who understood that capitalism had been so mismanaged and had been so tailored to the whims and preferences of the wealthy that something had to be done. And so what did the Democratic Party run on? Redistribution of wealth, reform, the changing of the system in order to bridge the divide of inequality. That's what the Democratic Party did. That's what the Democratic Party represented until the 1980s, 1990s. And now you have two parties One is so far right that they've gone over into fascism. Then you have the Democratic Party, which basically at this point, and I'm sorry, except for social issues, except for cultural issues, they are exactly where the Republican Party was decades ago. They are a center right, center, occasionally center left party. Now, that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. That is going back to what Jill said. Jill said what is at the core of the rot of the Democratic Party. That is. That's the core of it. That's the core of what's wrong with the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean that they're as bad as the Republicans. They're not. They are not even in the same universe as bad as the Republicans. We can have arguments about how there are problems and what it does to push off the idea of popular revolt or some sort of a working class movement because the Democratic Party says, hey, we're the party of the people. Well, it's horseshit. They moved away from that. Okay. They are not the Republican Party. They're not as bad as the Republican Party in that regard. The Republican Party, again, would happily shove your grandparents out of Social Security and make them go back into factories. All right. True story. That's what the Republican Party represents. In that regard, they're not even in the same hemisphere. But guess what? We can't sit here for the rest of our lives. I am 41 years old. I've aged so much in the past 6 years. I've watched the people I love hurt. I've watched them suffer. I've watched people give up hope. All right. I've watched people collapse into nihilism. I've watched the people that I love just absolutely get swallowed up by QAnonism and Trumpism because they didn't know where else to go. We cannot sit here for the rest of our lives and watch the Democratic Party one election after another. We cannot watch the Democratic Party continue to push forward millionaires and expect them to betray their class. Can't do it. Doesn't work anymore. We're running out of time because that Democratic Party, this midterm was a reprieve of an execution. Everything said that the Democratic Party was going to get destroyed, and the Democratic Party didn't do anything to help itself. There were only only a couple of candidates here and there who did anything to help themselves. What happened was that everybody said, my God, I really dislike the Democrats and I don't really trust them, but look at the Republican Party, because the Republican Party pulled up in a clown car. And they're going to learn from that. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But that's the central rot at the heart of the Democratic Party. And I refuse to sit back and watch that rot spread and watch that infection spread. I'm done. And you should be too. You deserve better. That's the central rot. So here's the question. Here are two of them. And I'll answer to go off of this and to expand. Two questions together. Begin. I bet the Dems will take precisely the wrong message from not being totally obliterated last week. What do we ordinary citizens do to basically burn the whole gerontocracy down and build a real progressive movement? Number two, Eileen, how do we drag the Democratic Party leftward? Sick of their we're all things to all people dithering. Here's what we need. And listen, I'm not going to do this on a live stream on Sunday. Like me just saying this as I'm sipping bourbon and talking to you, like it doesn't make it so. It doesn't make it happen, right? There's a lot of work. The only way that we're going to make the Democratic Party change and become somehow or another an instrument of the people, the only way that we're going to even possibly like move this thing at all is if it becomes something really, truly grassroots. It has to build off the labor movement. It has to build off communal aid. It has to build off solidarity on the local level, period. The Democratic Party for the next 2 years should not a member of them should go anywhere without having people scream, what are you going to do about Citizens United? What are you going to do about the Supreme Court? What are you going to do about climate change? What are you going to do to protect my rights? What are you going to do to protect Social Security and Medicare? Quit it with this shit about Potato Head. Quit it with this shit about Marvel movies. Quit it with this culture war stuff, which is just professional wrestling. Quit it with the fundraising emails. I'm not going to give you another cent. I'm done. We're not going to give you any more money to go and hand out to the strategist and consultant class because they don't give a damn. They get paid and they have fantastic lives, whether they win elections and whether or not they make a change or not. That needs to stop. And they need to understand, and this is going into 2024, and it needs to be made very clear. And the Republican Party did this in 2010 when the libertarian billionaires created the Tea Party and they made the Republican Party move right into white supremacist conspiracy theories out in the open. There has to be a movement of the people. And that cannot happen until we find one another. And here's the thing, and this is really, really important in all of this. And this is something that we're going to talk about more and more. We have to create a new faith. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about a spirituality of the people, but I'm not talking about religion. We will find hope and we will find direction and we will find identity and we will find movement and we will find faith in one another as we fight against this. If we can start to build this, and this is how revolutions happen. And that's right. I'm just going to say revolutions. This is how revolutions happen. You have to find something that galvanizes the people and everyone knows is true. This system is corrupted. This system is co-opted. This system has been bought. This system is unfair. This system is completely and utterly tuned to the wealthy and the powerful, their whims. We all know it. We have different ways of expressing it. Some of us say, hey, these corporations are out of control. Hey, I don't think Elon Musk should be able to do this. Hey, I think it's really troubling that people do this. I don't feel like it matters if I vote. Other people say, conspiracy theories, right? The Jews control the world and the satanic pedophiles and all of that. Like these are just expressions of the same thing. Saying the deep state is just the exact same thing as saying, man, I don't think my vote counts in this like technocratic world. It just so happens they're different iterations based on ideologies and our own worldviews. We can build something up, but we have to start finding people. We have to start trusting people. Capitalism and neoliberalism by design. Capitalism and neoliberalism by design and by strategy. Make sure that we don't trust each other. It makes sure that you think that I'm out to screw you and I think that you're out to screw me. That problem has to be bridged. Because if we're fighting a civil war with each other, like nothing's going to change. Like it'll get worse, but it's not going to get better. We have to rediscover trust in one another, faith in one another, and love in one another. Because right now we're all traumatized and we all feel alone and we don't know where to go or what to do. We're in a trauma state. That's true. We have to heal ourselves. We have to heal our communities and we have to heal the country. There's no other way to do it. That's how you move the Democratic Party left. That's how you redeem the Democratic Party. And if they don't listen, and if they manage to finagle their way around that, well, shit. We can at least say that we tried and try and form something else. I don't know. But the whole point is we got nothing left to lose anymore. We got everything to gain. We got everything to gain. I said this on Twitter the other day. I truly think, someday, I don't think YouTube will be around at this point. I don't think we'll be doing bourbon talks at that point. God knows what that will look like, right? But I think there's going to be a time in the future where we look back on this and we shake our heads and we say, how did we ever live like that? How in the hell did we ever live like that? And people say, how do you fix reality? How do you fix misinformation, disinformation, all of that? You find shared identity and you find shared hope and you find shared reality and solidarity in us going through these problems, us going through this struggle. If we fight this thing and if we create something worthy of ourselves, something worthy of our votes, that's where you find all of the things that renew this. The answer and I wrote about this in The Midnight Kingdom. The answer is that things change when we find new stories, when we allow ourselves new stories and new possibilities. Every revolution begins like that. You lived under one story and it was terrible and brutal and exploitative, and all of a sudden you're like, "Man, like, we could have something else, and it could be better." And the next thing you know, you fight, and you find it, and you find that new identity on the other side. And I always say this, everything seems impossible until it's inevitable, and I think the energy is there. I think that window is open right now. I've felt it. I've felt it, and I hope that you have. Like, things are changing, things are shifting, and it feels like there's a possibility here, and that's how you make it happen. Blue Typewriter says, in my opinion, Dems need to develop rapid response team to combat GOP messaging. In your opinion, what are the top 3 messaging strategies they can do better as we prepare for 2024? This goes from what we're talking about. Okay. If the Democratic Party made any sense, if the Democratic Party was the party of the people, number one thing is that we're all together in this, that the problem isn't you and it's not me. It's not people stealing elections. It's not, satanic pedophiles, whatever. It's us versus them. And that is the defining struggle of this, is that this is top down. That our system has been so rigged, and actually from the very beginning, it's important to understand that our system from the very, very beginning was created specifically to help the wealthy and the powerful, the white, wealthy, and powerful men. And that all of these things, electoral college, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the economic system that we live under, and the judicial system that we live under, that those things were very specifically created against us. They were created to control us, period. And once we start to realize that, and once we can start fighting for something else, like, they all of a sudden, we're not talking Democrat versus Republican, red versus blue, Clinton versus Trump, Biden versus Trump. We're talking about a system that was put in place a long, long time ago and needs to be reformed, needs to be updated, needs to be brought up. And by the way, that idea, it doesn't just unite people of different parties, it unites people of different parts of this country, it unites tons of different people, it unites generations, young to old. Number 2, the Democratic Party has to point out that it's not just the Republican Party. And by the way, they have to stop saying that the Republican Party will come to its senses. That has to stop, and they have to call the Republican Party an existential threat, and not because they're Republicans, and not because of the people who vote for them, who've been radicalized and are looking for some kind of avenue to, like, change things or attack people. It needs to be pointed out that the Republican Party is absolutely funded and is a PR front by a bunch of libertarian billionaires who have, on the record, and this isn't just like conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat things, they have intentionally, for decades, hidden everything from the effects of tobacco to climate change, you name it, and they have systematically bought off institutions in order to destroy reality and to maintain their power. And now they are funding everybody from Donald Trump to Ron DeSantis and the Stop the Steal, and you name it. Susan says, where's Elon Musk fit in that billionaire Republican group? He's part of it. He's part of it. He's absolutely part of it. Him and Peter Thiel have joined on to push forward the technocracy idea, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's message number 2, that there are a bunch of billionaires in this country who are basically running things and playing shadows on the wall. You start talking about that, all of a sudden you take the piss out of all these conspiracy theories. Get rid of it. Message number 3. They have to tell a story about the future. The Democratic Party has been reduced to defending institutions that shouldn't be defended. That's all they do. They say, oh God, the Republican Party wants to change everything in terrible ways. We should keep things the same. Well, horseshit. We shouldn't keep things the same. They don't work. We all know it. That's the only reason the Republican Party can gain any sort of control, is because, at least at the heart of everybody, we understand that something has to change. The Republican Party are and the right are the only people who are suggesting changes. There is no left. The left was assassinated. The left was systematically taken out by giant conspiracies that involved the state, intelligence agencies, and transnational terrorism. Take that in for a second. For real. The international left, the American left, were taken out by the FBI, by the CIA, by the state, by international terrorist organizations. Operation Condor was one of the largest terrorist organizations in human history. And all it did was it went around killing leftists. Leftists. So you have to create some sort of vision of the future, something that will actually address the material conditions that are at the heart of this thing. So that's the list. Those are the 3 talking points, and it has to change. Math whiz, should Biden run in 2024? Will he run in 2024? No, he shouldn't run. I've said this on the podcast a few times. Joe Biden is not the man for the moment. Joe Biden is a man who has spent the vast majority of his life in the Senate. He is a creature of the 20th century. I understand that he won the presidency by saying that he could restore unity or whatever. I don't think he understands the threat, and I don't think he's capable of leading us to the future. How could he lead us to the future? All he's doing is trying to remind us of what the past was. That's it. We need somebody who will take us into the future. We need somebody who understands the threat as it is, and we need somebody who can articulate and also encapsulate a bridge to the future. It has to be somebody who has a different way of doing things and has a way to move us forward. So no, I don't think Joe Biden should run in 2024. I don't. I've got a few ideas of maybe who should replace him, but I think he'll probably run, and I think it's a mistake, and I think it's a mistake for everybody. I just think it's a mistake. John says, if the GOP descends into a MAGA versus establishment civil war, Trump versus DeSantis as faction leaders, what are some likely outcomes? Not so much for the GOP, but for the greater impact on the country. This is absolutely happening. And by the way, anybody who's been listening to the Muckrake podcast, we've been talking about this for over a year. We knew that this was coming because it was obvious. It was obvious. I want to point out, listen, we've had a very serious conversation tonight. Very intense, very emotional conversation. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do one of these. Let's have a little pat on the back. This is so obvious. And I can't believe that it's like the day after the midterms, and all of a sudden you have serious pundits. You have serious analysts who are getting paid 6 figures, who have made ungodly amounts of money writing for like having the biggest platform imaginable. And they're like, I think maybe there's a coming battle between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Well, no shit, Sherlock. We've known this was coming. It's not hard. Like, if you pay attention to this stuff and you know your history and you know how things work, it's absolutely absurd. So, absolutely, this is happening. The MAGA civil war is here, and I will go ahead and say that the implications here. I said this on the podcast. I want to say it was on Friday. Like, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. The system doesn't want Donald Trump anymore. The Republican Party doesn't want Trump anymore. Its media apparatus doesn't want Trump anymore. They are so desperate, however, to take the MAGA base and pick them up almost like in a crane game and just move them over here without them realizing that they've been like moved, right? They want to go ahead and transfer it because the Republican Party is historically unpopular. It's a minoritarian party. And on top of that, like, they need to gain control of the party back from Donald Trump. They don't want the base out there screaming about kids using litter boxes. Nobody wants to vote for that. Why in the living hell? Like, some of these people, I mean, my God, some of these Republican people, they live to do nothing but go into school board meetings and scream at people about blood libel. And by the way, we'll talk more about that in a second, about why the midterms happened the way that they did. Like, the base wants base stuff. They want like this culture war stuff. They want to scream about QAnonism and the elections being stolen. The Republican Party has long kept this paranoid white supremacist conspiracy theory ridden base at home. It's Frankenstein's monster. They lost control of the monster, and the monster took over the party. And in part, they took over the party because the wealthy helped them do it, because they have been great for business. Because even though Donald Trump ran both to the left and to the right of the Democratic Party, he still got into office and handed over trillions of dollars to billionaires and furthered the project of neoliberalism. So, what's going to happen? That's a question for a different topic. I have my thoughts on where this thing is going and how it's going to play out, but my God, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But the whole point of this is the Republican Civil War that we're watching take shape right now. It is going to determine a large part of what happens to this country. So that brings me to the next question. By the way, I'm enjoying this. I hope you're having a good time. I don't know if good time's the word. I'm feisty tonight. I'm feeling good, feeling fit, feeling feisty. It was a hell of a good time. And not just that, I'm ready to fight, man. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to like change things. I'm tired. Tired of the bullshit. I am punchy tonight. Thanks for noticing. Whew. Pissed off at so much of this shit. Vivaldi's Four Seasonings says, do you think this election will make some members of the GOP more reluctant to use openly fascist messaging in future elections? And if so, do you think it's a good thing if politicians don't feel quite so comfortable openly appealing to those desiring a dictatorship? Well, first of all, do not mistake what's happening in that they're not talking about a dictatorship, because the furthest reaches of the right is talking about a dictatorship. Like they're out there and they're like, really disappointing defeat for Republicans. After years of talking about this, it might just be time for a dictatorship. Oh, okay. Wild. Can't believe you just said that in public, but here we are. So here is what's happening with the Republican Civil War that we're talking about. In this, what the Republicans are taking from this election is not that they need to de-radicalize, not that they need to increase their base by somehow or another becoming, decent or more understanding or more cosmopolitan or any of that stuff. That's not what they're worried about. What they're worried about is whether or not they can hide it, whether or not they can go ahead and promise the same things. Because again, so much of this has been seeing Donald Trump and being like, oh God, that worked. Oh, there are no consequences. Oh, there are no guardrails. Holy shit. You can just do whatever you want at any given time. That's amazing. We've wanted to do that for a long time. The current Republican movement is towards illiberalism. It's towards what's going on in Hungary. It's towards what's going on in Russia. They want to take America as America is in decline, and it is. The American empire is declining, and there have to be decisions made. I personally think that the decline of America can be handled with grace and aplomb, and that by redistribution of wealth and power, we might be able to make something decent out of this country. I personally believe that. But the right is more towards our liberalism, which is that they're going to find people of color, women, immigrants, gay and trans people, poor people. They're going to go ahead and put the onus on those people. And they're going to use the power of the state to go ahead and redistribute wealth to their chosen groups, white evangelical people, and also to go ahead and basically hand over power to corporate overlords like Peter Thiel. That's what they want to do. And that's not just me saying it. That's what they say whenever they think we're not listening. And in fact, they've gotten really crazy bold with it. The whole point is, yes, they're going to try and temper Trumpism. They want to find somebody, and this is something we've talked about now for a year, talked about it on the Muckrake podcast, talked about it in every interview I've done over the past year. They are absolutely salivating over the idea of a Ron DeSantis. Somebody who can do what Trump does, but he can do it without being so weird. Donald Trump is weird. He's off-putting. He's so selfish and narcissistic and destructive. And he just says weird shit, And he's stupid. They want to find their smart, competent Trump. And that's what they're trying to do. Now, are they going to be able to do it? That's a great question. There are several things that DeSantis is also really weird. He's weird in a way that politicians usually are just weird. Like it's a Ted Cruz. He's got a lot of Ted Cruz weirdness to him. You know what I mean? Like he's not. Lisa says terrible public speaker. Completely agreed. It's bad. It's really, really bad. But he is exactly what they want because he has shown the ability to competently wield power in in an authoritarian manner. No, nobody is as weird as Cruz. Save your beers, people. Don't throw it at Ted Cruz. Drink them. Period. But with all of this, is it going to happen? How is it going to go? Things are going to be wild. We were talking about this on the podcast, the last episode. Like, if Donald Trump actually does get indicted, like that'd be one of the best things for the Republican Party. They could just be like, "Oh, look what they did to our leader. We have to win one for Trump, and then give it to somebody else." The system doesn't want him around, and so many of these appendages don't want him around. And the question is, what happens when push comes to shove? Kim, will the GOP try to suppress the youth vote next? Yep. Yep. That's it. I mean, the Republican Party, the next senator from the great state of Ohio, JD Vance, was using like a real Hungarian and liberal idea that like people with children should be able to vote for their children because they have more of a case for the future, right? Yeah, they're going to try all kinds of things. They are going to use all of the system to their advantage because the system privileges minoritarian institutions, particularly the wealthy and the white. It was designed that way. So yeah, they'll go ahead and use that. They're going to disenfranchise, they're going to gerrymander, they are going to absolutely take away rights to vote. That's it. Period. That's what they're going to do. Lee, and this was in the chat before we got started. Can we talk about the mainstream media's rooting interest? Absolutely, and I'm so glad you asked that, and that's why I put it on the list. Listen, the mainstream media wanted the Republicans to win so bad. So bad. And here is part of there are multiple reasons why the mainstream media wanted the Republicans to win. And this is part of the reason why the entire narrative of the red wave didn't not only the fact that it didn't come through, but the fact that like it was like, wait a second, I thought this was supposed to be like a total annihilation. The mainstream media, here's a couple of things. All right. One, a Republican controlled Congress and a Democratic president and Joe Biden, count your money, people. That's prime time. Like that's a good steak. You can just eat that steak all night. My God, investigations, impeachments, debt ceiling showdowns. Holy God. Cha-ching. That's a great time for the mainstream media. Matter of fact, there would even be a Republican Speaker of the House. Can you imagine? We could have the Republican Speaker and we could have Joe Biden. And oh my God, it would almost be like Clinton and Gingrich, wouldn't it? They want it so bad. And here's something to remember for the future. Whether the mainstream media wants to admit it, whether or not the mainstream media is even aware of it consciously, the ideas that push profit in media, including fear, terror, dysfunction, they're bad for the country. They're great for ratings. They're great for advertising dollars. They want it to fall apart. They won't admit it. And like, if you talk to them, they'll be like, oh my God, can you believe that? Can you believe that Sexton was saying that we want things to fall apart? That's the profit motive. That's the profit motive. It's not even conscious. It's just unconscious. Second thing in all of this, there's a reason why the mainstream media sits there and tells you that the Republican Party is just as dangerous as the radicals on the college campuses, talking about their pronouns, talking about their CRT. And why? Because they are institutional liberals. And that means they have no like desire whatsoever to actually look at their own privilege and understand how they've arrived there. Most of the people in our media are legacy cases. Most of the people in our media, their parents were either in the media or they have the money that goes ahead and makes sure that their parents can pay for their apartments. Their parents can make sure that they can go ahead and take a job at a news media organization for $40,000 a year and live in Manhattan. okay? Like, it is class, like consciousness. That's what's happening. And as a result, they are going along with this exact same idea, which is maybe the Democrats are a little too radical. The Democrats aren't radical. The Democrats are a center right, center, possibly center left, depending upon who we're talking about, party. The people talking about pronouns, the people talking about CRT, actual history, the people who are talking about these things, the people who are gay or trans, these are not powerful people, period. These are not people who have control over levers of government. The Democratic Party has a few leftists or progressives, and they don't get much involvement in any of the politics. They're singled out actually for fundraising among the Democratic Party. They're shut out of decision making. They want to crush any element of the left and anything that even looks like the beginnings of the left. And many of them will more than happily accept authoritarianism because they don't want to betray their class. When it comes down to it, the wealthy and the privileged do not want to betray their class. They don't want to lose what they have. They don't want to chance what they have. I say it all the time. It is a thing. It's like the let's make a deal. Oh, over here is all the power and wealth and privilege that you have. Like you're a small celebrity. Maybe you even have a blue check mark on Twitter. I don't know. And over here is a box, which maybe it's the world getting better and maybe it's the world getting worse. Maybe you losing a little bit of money. What are you going to choose? They're going to choose what they have because they're not going to betray their class. It costs nothing to espouse principles that you don't have to put anything on the line. Cheers that. Real fast, and we got a few more here, but we always toast it at 1 hour. David, was the origin of the name neoliberalism a kind of identity theft of the name liberalism? No, it was a resurgence of the name liberalism. So neoliberalism, just to go ahead, and I know a lot of people know this, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're learning here, okay? Neoliberalism is a political project that took control, particularly of the United States and Great Britain in the 1970s, 1980s. It pushed austerity, which means starving of social programs. It meant that we weren't going to pay for people to get health care. We weren't going to pay for programs that help the poor and the vulnerable. It meant that they were going to be starved and eventually those programs would fall apart. They also pushed deregulation, which meant letting loose of the titans of industry, taking off anything that kept them from, basically destroying the world. Also, neoliberalism created a profit motive in everything. It basically said, oh, we can go ahead and take every single possible thing that we can and go ahead and make people pay more for it, right? You pay one price to go ahead and get the economy seat on a flight. You pay another price to get the business seat. You pay another price to get the first class, and they get better as you go, and they're absolutely awful if you're paying the base level price. It also was privatization, which meant going ahead and handing over the state's powers and resources and selling it to people and making sure that they could go ahead and do it for their own profit motive. That's neoliberalism. Neoliberalism in the name. And here's the thing, real fast. We got to talk about this. Neoliberal doesn't mean Democrat. It doesn't mean Democrat. In fact, neoliberalism is Republican, but it's also Democrat. It's both. In Britain, Labour has been neoliberal. The Conservatives have been neoliberal. Okay, so it's everybody. It is not just not the idea of liberal that we hear. It is classically liberal, and classically liberal is this system that we're all living within. Capital L liberal means capitalism. It means that at the heart of all of society is the protection of private property. I had Andrew Seidel on the podcast. Somebody said I should have Andrew Seidel. I had Andrew Seidel on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. But traditional liberalism, capital L, is what neoliberalism is returning to. It's getting beyond investment. It's going beyond the New Deal idea that we should be investing in those things. And it's saying we should get back to the government doing nothing for anybody except for protecting the markets and expanding the markets. Neoliberalism is classical liberalism with a capital L, going ahead and taking care of private property, as opposed to making sure that the state takes care of people and makes sure that people are safe, and regulating capitalism. It says don't do it. So no, it didn't steal liberalism. It returned to the original idea of liberalism, which we never ever talk about. All right, we're coming up on 1 hour. We have a couple of questions here, and we'll get to it, but I wanna say thank you as always. This has been a hell of a good time. All right, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. To future victories. I am drinking Basil Hayden tonight because we got celebrations. We got new worlds and new futures to build. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Got to build a new world, new futures. They better be damn well better, I'll tell you that. How could they be worse? After all this. Left academia a few months ago. I had to get away. I still want to teach. I miss teaching like hell. I'll find new opportunities to teach, but yeah, I had to get out. I had to get my hands dirty. I needed to write full time. I needed to fight this thing full time, and I didn't feel like the institutions held up my values. I'll just say that. I don't think that they, at some point down the road, I'll talk more about it. I'll talk about those values and how academia didn't hold them up. But I'm teaching right now. That's exactly right. And that's what I'm focusing on. So I want to teach for a while. The book comes out in January. I'll go out, I'll talk to people about the book. I'm doing these lectures. I'm trying to figure out ways to teach. I want to teach writing. I want to teach history. I want to teach politics. I want to make sure that all of this stuff is talked about. And I love teaching. It is one of my life's callings. I'm still working with students. I'm still working with people, and I just absolutely adore teaching. I miss the classroom. I was tenured. I got full professor and walked away from it. And it's hard. It's a really hard thing, and I'm still adjusting to it. I haven't been talking about it very much, but like I said, I'll talk about it more at a different time. But yeah, I'm a teacher, and this is part of me teaching. This is one of my classrooms. Adam says, "Do I care where you pre-order the book from? Order it from wherever you want, your local bookstore. Order it from Penguin Random House, Dutton, whatever you want to do. But it would be really, really cool if you pre-ordered it. Helps the book, all that good stuff." Brooklyn Cybel, 2 questions. Or Cybele? Cybel? I don't know. Yeah, the book's gonna be audio. I just recorded the audiobook. I had such a good time. I had such a good time. I'm also working on right now, I've been talking about booking tour dates. I'm gonna be zooming around the country, coming to see you. And I'm looking forward to that. Man, am I looking forward to that. American Rule didn't have a book tour, and that really bummed me out. Really, really bummed me out. Yeah. So I wanna get out. I wanna get out everywhere. I wanna go out east, I wanna go out west, I wanna go north, I wanna go south, I wanna go everywhere that'll have me. So if you live somewhere, you have a bookstore that you care about, tell the bookstore, "Bring this guy in. I'll come and hang out." Yeah. I'll come and hang out. Go and tell your bookstore, get a hold of me. I will do it, and I would love it, and we'll get some people there, and we'll have a good time, and I will close that place out. But that comes out in January, and then I don't know. I'll figure out the teaching. I'll figure out where things are going. I'll figure out what's happening at that point, but miss it like hell. Brooklyn Cybele, I've decided, not Cybele. Oh my God, I could go to Southern California and do a meet and greet with Nick. That's a great idea. Nick and I really want to go out on the road and do some live podcast. We want to make that happen here sometime before too long. We want to start going on location to some places. That would be really, really cool. Really, really cool. Okay, Brooklyn Cybele, I've decided. 2 questions. How significant is it that Lexalt is making a point of saying that he might get overtaken, might lose, and it's all part of the electoral process? And do you think MAGAism has crested and is rolling back? I think, first of all, I think to not go ahead and contest the election speaks very well of people, but also not everybody can do it. Like, to go ahead and say the election is stolen and to call into question liberal democracy, like, not everybody has that. You know what I mean? Not everybody Not everybody has the capability to be Donald Trump and just not give a shit about any of the consequences. Now, has MAGAism crested? No. I think what we are going to see is that MAGA will be the forerunner of something else, and I think it's national conservatism. To give you a preview of what Nick and I are going to talk about on the podcast for Tuesday's episode, it's going to be like the fact that national conservatism is now making its move to try and take over the party. And so we will probably look at MAGA the same way we looked at Barry Goldwater. You know, Barry Goldwater got washed out of his election. He got absolutely defeated and ate shit, but he created the conservative reactionary movement that would eventually take over the country. And I think MAGA is going to look a lot like that. Same thing as the John Birch Society. We do not really wrestle with these things. We like to pretend that they just go away, but they create movements and they move forward. So I don't think MAGAism has crested. I think it's moving and changing, is what I would say. Chin TX. Let's talk about FTX. Absolutely, let's do that. And their financial crimes and overvaluation. Isn't that what the Trump organization does? Absolutely, it does. And this is part of it. America in 2022 is a grift. There's no other way to put it. Everybody, not everybody, you got to be careful of language. I'm learning to be careful about language. We got to be careful how we say things, because if it's absolute, like that creates a reality. Everybody's trying to do it, but we're not. Some of us are engaged in solidarity and trust building and trying to bring together communal efforts. A lot of people are engaged in a lot of grifts. And everybody always says to me, is MAGA real? Is it an actual authoritarian movement, or is it a grift? It's the exact same thing. And it has an entire ecosystem of little feeder fish who are all getting fat and happy off of all the crumbs that are floating down from MAGA. Now, all of this is like part and parcel of where America, and I hope, here's the thing. My hope and what I'm feeling lately is that the era of deregulation, the era of prioritizing wealth and greed over the health of the people and democracy and the nation and the species for that matter, my hope is that we've reached the end of that, or we've reached the near end of that. What we're watching with crypto, what we're watching with Musk, what we're watching with all these people is it's just being so exposed for being so hollow. There's nothing there, ever. It's just money. Money doesn't solve anything. It gives you power. It gives you the ability to buy things. It gives you the ability to not think about what's going on with you. I said this in a Twitter thread the other day. Trump, Musk, all these people, they're so empty. And here's the reason why. We're told that wealth will solve everything. We're told that we'll feel better if we just make it up to the next tax bracket. We'll be totally fine if we just buy what we want, or if we buy the next best thing, or if somehow or another we transcend our station in life, everything will be fine. It's not true. We all have what we need inside of us. It's these people who are running from it. They're trying to get the wealth. They're trying to fill something they can't be filled. Elon Musk could take all of his money and he could just enjoy life. He could have the best dinners. He could go everywhere. He could have anything in the world. He has his own space agency. You know what I mean? He has his own. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And what's it got him? He's miserable. He's spending his time on Twitter, fighting with people, being a smartass, running it into the ground. Donald Trump, whether he's a billionaire or a millionaire, we don't have to talk about that. Go around, eat the finest meals. He could have wonderful relationships with his family, with people. He could help people. He could go and see anything. He could do anything. He's miserable. He became the most powerful man in the world. He won the presidency of the United States of America without even really kind of wanting it, you know? He ended up being the thing that everybody talked about at every moment, at every time. He will have traumatized an entire generation of people. And it didn't fill the hole. Because goods can't fill the hole. Consumption can't fill the hole. Money can't fill the hole. Capitalism works on a false promise. And the false promise is the next dollar you make will fix it. The next thing you buy will fix it. It doesn't. It's all external. It's all internal. You have to make the internal change yourself, which is why. And we got a couple more questions here in just a second. It's one of the reasons we'll win is for a large reason because there are many of us, whether it's because we weren't given the money or the wealth or the power or the affluence or the privilege, because we weren't given that, we were able to be authentic people. We weren't screwing everybody. We weren't hurting a bunch of people. We weren't committing cultural genocides. We'll win this thing. There's many more of us because of the concentration of capital. But the pursuit of all those things is so hollow and meaningless. And I want to say, like the crypto thing, it was get rich quick. It was all pyramid schemes all the way down, and it always was. America has been taken over by MLM. It's been taken over by pyramid schemes. It's been taken over by a bunch of people who do not care if they hurt a lot of other people as long as they're able to get their wealth. And that is not sustainable. The right talks all the time about cultural degeneracy. They talk about cultural decay. The meaning's been lost, right? And they always say it's religion. And you, by the way, you can be religious. You can be spiritual. I'm learning to be spiritual right now. And it's hard because, all that old programming from religion. And I'm learning to be spiritual because I believe there's something magic about people. Because I got to tell you, like, there's something much more valuable in finding people than there is in taking their money. Because it doesn't matter if you actually take their money. It doesn't matter if you screw them out of everything that they own. You can have literally billions of dollars. You can be the wealthiest man in the world. You can be Elon Musk. Or, I mean, technically Vladimir Putin, but that's neither here or there. You can be Elon Musk and have everything. You could be on the verge of, creating an empire the likes of which you've never actually seen. And it doesn't matter. Because if you're not well, and if you're not taking care of yourself, and you're not taking care of the people around you, and you're not taking care of what is deep, deep down, and if you don't have faith in other people and you don't have some sort of faith in a better future that isn't about your glory or your narcissism, it's nothing. It's absolutely a house of sand. And that is becoming obvious to us. We used to be told that we were going to be rich and we were going to be wealthy, and if we just worked hard enough, we would figure a way out. And then we figured out, by the way, that meritocracy was horseshit. It wasn't ever real. Like, all those people had a head start in capitalism, and all their families have just absolutely just passed that money down, that wealth out, that power out, just over and over and over again. It's never been fair. But we were told it. That was our religion. That was our spirituality. It was that somehow or another that America was going to do us right because America was good and America was God's country and the meritocracy was real. And it was horseshit from the very, very start. And here's the thing. I know that that's hard. And I know that that's heartbreaking. And I know personally from my own experience and the people that I love and the people that I care about, that learning that the meritocracy isn't real at first is very lonely. You know what I mean? It takes away the promise that somehow or another you can climb up the rung, that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, that you can somehow or another fight your way up. And it wasn't real. And at first, when you realize that, it's a gulping despair. And you rage against it. You get so mad at it. And then it's just like, why should you care? Nihilism comes in, it feels the wound. But eventually you realize, oh my God, there's other things that I can do. There's other ways. There are other things that are important. It's not grinding. It's not It's not swindling people out of their money. It's not fancy cars. It's not these recruitments of wealth and conspicuous consumption. Those things don't matter. They don't. They really truly don't. $1,000 meal can just absolutely be eclipsed by a dinner at McDonald's with people that you love. And once you realize that, and once you start to understand what is important and who is important and how it is important and how that brings you life, if you get that, you can restore the faith that was lost by that horse shit and bullshit that you were fed your entire life. If you can start to realize it's your family, the people you love, it's your community, it's nature, it's whatever it is. It's true. And we have to rediscover that. We have to have a revival. That's what this is. Neoliberalism has hollowed out any and all meaning. It doesn't mean that you have to bring in the church to install discipline. It doesn't mean that you have to fill it with God-based discipline and sin and feeling awful about yourself. You're not awful. You're not wicked. You're not wretched. You're not broken. You were told that. You were fed that. You were communicated that and crushed under that for your entire lives. It's not true. It was never true. None of it was true. And now it is time to find something you can believe in. It's not crypto. It's not NFTs. It's not memes of Democratic politicians. It's not looking for saviors on the ballot. It's finding the people that you can trust and you can love and you can work with and you can fight to build a better world. And if that's religion, and if that's faith, if it's spirituality, then that's what it is. And I have come to believe that that's what it is. But you got to change it. It's not getting rich. It's not gaining power. You can win elections. You can take over Congress. You can take over the presidency. And we've learned that. 2020, we learned that. Everybody thought that Joe Biden was going to become president and everything was going to be put to right. That's not how this works. Donald Trump wasn't the problem. Donald Trump is a symptom of a larger disease. We are a culture that has lost its way, and we have been exploited, and we have been traumatized. Somebody says that's the same message religion preaches. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. I'm not selling you a tonic, though. I'm not trying to buy a private jet. I just want the world to be better. And we got to rediscover faith. And we got to rediscover spirituality in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't have to be in a church, and it doesn't have to be in a temple, and it doesn't have to be in a mosque. It can be in our hearts, and it can be in our communities. Lauren says, can you please talk about what the heck is happening with Elon and Twitter? I wish it was an easy question to answer. I think it's a combination of things. I think on one hand that he is incompetent. I think he's totally incompetent. I don't think he's an actual business person. I think he is a joke, and I think he is a grifter, and he has absolutely used the systems to his advantage. He's just another NFT crypto person. That's what he is. He's an absolute grifter. Him and Donald Trump are just like two sides of the same coin. Also on top of that, it was the takeover of the information space. They got rid of all the misinformation. Me and a lot of other misinformation, disinformation people. Kelly, I'm going to answer that in a second. They got rid of all the teams that were taking care of that. We have been watching just massive disinformation campaigns going after it. So there's a lot of different things. I do not think, again, like Donald Trump, I don't think there's a silver bullet answer. I don't think it is, it's as simple as a simple explanation. It's that he's incompetent. It's that as one of the world's richest people, he is authoritarian in nature. He has decided, like a lot of the new right, that you have to take over information spaces in order to change the world. And also, again, going back to it, I think he's just completely and utterly full of shit. It's true. Du Chateau said, and somebody just asked in it, when this place implodes, Twitter, is there a platform you think you will go to? Um, I don't know. I don't think Twitter's gonna close. I hope not anyway. And I want to say this. I've been one of those people who have said, Twitter's a hellscape. And I've even joked. I was like, man, if Twitter would just go down, like the world would get better. I don't believe that. And I'll tell you why I don't believe that. Um, I have seen people build communities there. I've seen people find other people. I've seen people engage in solidarity. I've seen people find comfort and hope and companionship. People have found love on Twitter. Um, Twitter has saved lives. I completely agree. I don't think that you can simply say that it's an awful thing. It's had good components. On top of that, I'll say personally, it reminds me how funny humans are, and I'll say that because I'm feeling so hopeful. I am feeling more hopeful than I've ever felt in my entire life right now, and I mean that. Humans are amazing, and I know that we get frustrated with the people in our lives. We get frustrated politically and socially, and we'll go ahead and bring this plane in for a landing by saying this: people are so funny. Oh my god. The things people post on Twitter, they're so funny. There's so many people who spend their entire lives just being funny on Twitter. There's so many people who spend their entire lives posting pictures of, like, or, videos of, like, dogs and cats, and, like, they care about people. Like, you can feel authenticity on Twitter. You know when someone is trying to game you, and you know when people are trying to take care of each other, and you watch people take care of each other. I I have the last 6 years have been very hard for me. I I didn't want this, I didn't go out looking for it. I went viral reporting from this Trump rally, and, there were years still where people threatened me. They would show up at my house, they would stalk me and the people I cared about, and I I woulda quit a long time ago, except for the kindness of strangers. I I get I get emails every day from people who say that they found me on Twitter, that my threads have helped them understand things. I get emails every day from people who say that they read my books and it helped them understand things. It helped them have conversations with their families and their loved ones. And I gotta tell you, I'm not gonna feel bad about that. You know what I mean? Like, we have to support each other. And it's a beautiful thing. I talk about the Muckrake community all the time from the Muckrake podcast all the time. And, it's like I see people being kind to one another. I see people, like, when things have gotten hard, they pick each other up. And I've seen people say, "Hey, I've been feeling so rough lately. I've been feeling so alone lately." And they take care of each other. And I see that on Twitter, and I think it's so easy. I think it's so damn easy to lose hope in this world. And God knows, like, my business, my research, my focus is on radicalization. My focus is on what is just over the hill and coming for us. And I know that that's what I've had to look at and diagnose and talk about, but I remain optimistic. Every interview that I do, I talk this serious stuff, and then eventually the interviewer goes, "Oh, well, that's depressing." And I have to say, I'm not depressed. I was more nihilistic before I learned this stuff than I am now. I'm more hopeful than ever. Humanity is beautiful. Humanity is So funny and so kind. Humanity is not wretched. Humanity is not broken. Humanity is not fallen. It's all horseshit. And it keeps us from being our best selves, and it keeps us from harnessing our power. And that's what's going to make the better future, which is when we figure that out, when we unburden ourselves from these burdens, when we heal from this trauma, when we are kind and we receive kindness and we have faith in one another. It's coming. I feel it. I hope you feel it. I hope in the middle of all of this and this, we're going on an hour and a half right now. I hope during this conversation you felt it, and I hope you continue to feel it. But we're going to win this fight. I'll be damned. We're going to win this fight. And it's going to be so hard. And there's going to be a lot of mourning, and there's going to be a lot of suffering, and there's going to be a lot of turmoil. But I have to tell you, we're going to win this damn thing. We just are. Humanity is very special. And we have so much to win. We have so much to win. All right. Thank you for hanging out. This has been really special to me. I knew it was going to be before I got on here. John says, "What's the Dukakis pick?" This is a very famous moment in American political history in which Mike Dukakis, the Democratic nominee in '88, jumped in a tank and looked absolutely absurd. And it kind of he wasn't going to win the election, but it like cratered his campaign. Underneath it, it says "Product or progress is our product." It's something I've had a very long time. Real fast before we go, thank you for being here. Thank you for lifting me up over and over and over again and making me better. I've needed it. It's very easy to lose hope. It's very easy to lose direction, especially when things are tough. This is not a celebration of a Democratic Party doing better in the midterms. It's a celebration of a window, of a moment of healing. And I want so badly, and I hope that you will join me, for us to get our hands dirty and to go out and find other people in our communities and in our areas, and find other people that we can work with and we can build solidarity with and trust and faith and build our own new spirituality with. And I think we'll win that way. I hope you'll think about it. I hope that'll rest with it. I hope those are the things you walk away from here with. I want to thank you for coming out. It's always wonderful when you come out, and it means the world to me. One last toast to getting better, to making a better world, and again, our eventual victory. Cheers. All right. Let's do it again soon.